Hey Royals, welcome back to my channel. I'm Josette. So let's get into this video. Let's talk about how to choose your lock size. Ever since I started my Microlocs journey, I've gotten questions and comments about how did I decide on this lock size. And so I'm going to break down my thought process going into choosing my lock size. So for those of you who don't know, who are new to my channel, I just got my Microlocs installed on September 16th. 2020. My mom installed them for me using 1/4 inch parts all around my head. I have medium to high density hair, I have fine strands, and I have 4C and 4B textures. The 4B textures are concentrated here and around the back of my head, right at the back. That's info about my hair. Yeah, so let's get into the video. Okay, so the 5 things that I would consider when deciding on my lock sizes are: what is your hair density / hair texture? What is your current hair length? What is the aesthetic of what you're going for? How do you feel about maintenance? And 5th thing is versatility. How versatile do you want your locks to actually be? Let's talk about each of these, break it down, go through my thought process, and hopefully this helps you out in deciding what lock size you want. Okay, so the first question you want to ask yourself and evaluate with your own head of hair: what is your hair density, hair texture? Like I said, hair density for me, medium around here, high pretty much everywhere else, especially in the crown, and hair texture 4B, 4C. So knowing those things about my hair, I decided that I wanted to utilize my hair density by doing smaller locks. I knew that I wanted a high lock count. I have 577 locks, higher than initially anticipated, but I think it'll grow out really nicely. So if you know that you have a high density, then you have to decide for yourself, how do you want to use that density? I'm going to be honest with you, having a higher density does give you a bit more freedom, but that doesn't mean that if you have fine hair texture that you have no options at all. So let's talk about high density first. If you have high density hair, you really can choose if you want to do the traditional lock parting, so like 1/2 inch and bigger, or if you want to do Microlocs parting, which is 1/2 inch or smaller. You have that freedom to choose. Do you want like 90 locks, or do you want 500, 400, 300? It's really up to you, because having higher density hair, if you do like 90 locks, they will still look fluffy and they'll look full, and you'll have a nice sized lock. If you do a higher lock count, so smaller parting, you will then have full hair. It'll be pretty thick, pretty fluffy. So what do you see for yourself? How do you want to use that hair density, and what look are you going for, basically? I'll get more into that in a second. Okay, so going to hair texture. I knew that with my hair texture, I did have the freedom to do pretty much any size, just because with 4C hair, like really kinky coils, your hair is going to lock pretty quickly. The looser your hair texture is, typically the longer it will take to lock, and you'll experience more slippage, which is what I've experienced with the front and the back, because it is a looser texture of hair. So what hair texture do you have? If you have kinky coily 4C hair, don't be afraid to do bigger parts and use the traditional lock method with cone coils, because your hair will lock fairly quickly. And likewise, if you have a looser hair texture it might be better to go with smaller parts and using the 2-strand twist method or interlocking or braiding. So that's just to give you a little bit of insight on the options you have with thicker hair. So let's go into finer hair. Typically, a lot of people say that if they have finer hair that they want to have smaller locks, and I completely agree with that. I do agree that your hair will only be so thick, but at the same time, I've seen the magical things that locks can do on fine hair. So I would definitely say to go for definitely smaller than 1/2 inch parting for finer hair, and you will see your hair fluff up. I've seen lots of people on Instagram who have fine hair, and also people on YouTube who have fine hair, and their hair really flourished with locks. So don't be discouraged if you have fine hair. Don't think that I don't want to get like the smaller size locks with interlocking because I don't want that scalpy look. You will have that scalpy look in the beginning, but everyone does, and it will go away as your locks mature and they fluff up. So don't shy away from the interlocking method and having smaller parts and smaller locks with fine hair. Now it is totally up to you if you want to do medium-sized to larger locks with fine hair. I just wouldn't advise it if you are expecting to have really thick, fluffy locks. The reality is that by getting smaller locks with fine hair, you will be getting the most out of your hair density. Now let's go into the length to start your locks. Now, before I got my Microlocs, I was thinking that I would wait till I had probably like 6+ inches. That was my initial first thought, but I decided that since I wanted small locks, I was really excited to go ahead and start my lock journey with 2 to 3 inches. Now, if you have 2 to 3 inches of a really loose texture and you want large traditional locks, it's going to take a lot of patience to become fully locked. Trust me, like there's going to be a lot of unraveling, a lot of slippage. My mom started her traditional locks using the finger coil method, and she was telling me that she has a pretty soft hair texture, and she was telling me that on wash days her hair would just completely slip out and she'd have to redo the entire thing. So it takes a lot of patience, especially with a looser texture of hair, and on top of it, if you have short hair, you're starting with big parts, it's going to take a lot of patience. The same thing goes for if you have short hair starting on smaller parts. It's going to take a lot of patience because you have to redo it every time. Let's say you have 2 to 3 inches of hair. I would advise to do smaller parts and interlocking, but of course this is just a suggestion, it's up to you. If you want to start traditional locks, I would suggest waiting till your hair is a bit longer and then doing comb coils or finger coils, whatever the case is, just because I just feel like it will be easier to maintain working with longer hair. But that's just how I process it. Okay, so now it's time to consider the aesthetic. What are you going for visually? When you're scrolling through Instagram or when you're saving stuff on Pinterest, what do you gravitate towards? Is it that really gorgeous, those thick locks that you see where people have like maybe 50 locks? Or do you gravitate towards that really small micro-lock look where it almost looks like an afro? Or do you gravitate towards something in between where it's small to medium-sized locks that are just like looking very heavy and shiny and uniform? What look do you want? What is your aesthetic? What is your desired appearance? So for me, since I redid the small traditional locks look, I didn't want to repeat that. I wanted to try something new. So every picture that I was seeing on Instagram, everything that I saved, it was with people with really small locks. You could still tell that they were locks, but they were so small and it made their hair fluffy and big, and that was the look I was going for. So that's why I chose to do 1/4 inch parts. That's why I have such a high loc count. I knew aesthetically I wanted to have volume, and I just wanted my hair to look full without having to put any curls or anything in it. So aesthetically, I knew that I wanted that look. What look do you want? What is your desired, your ideal look? Taking into consideration the things I've already mentioned, when you envision your hair goals, like if you close your eyes and you picture yourself with locks 5 years from now, what do you see? Open your eyes, write it down, make a note of it, do the research, reach out to people, do it yourself if you can, and just get your lock journey started. Okay, so another thing with determining which lock size you want, and this is probably the most important thing in my opinion, is maintenance. So if you are not one for maintenance, if you don't want to pay someone to do your hair, you're not interested in learning how to retighten yourself, how to interlock yourself, do not do small interlocks or do not do small microlocs, because typically people maintain it with the interlocking method. I've seen people, like I think Alicia James on YouTube, she does twisting. I don't know how she does it, but good for her. It looks really good and natural. If you're not interested in maintaining yourself, I would not advise doing smaller locks at all. But if you just want locks so badly and you're willing to do a little bit of maintenance yourself, I would suggest doing a larger lock size, which would mean a lower lock count, which means less time spent on your hair. Most of the time, if you have like traditional size locks, you have the freedom to interlock, but you also have the freedom to just palm roll, twist with your fingers. Yeah, a lot of people enjoy that, and I can totally see why. Like, I'm even a little bit dreading doing my retightening in like 2 weeks because I have 577 locks. Like, that is a lot of hair, a lot of individual locks to do, but it's what I signed up for, and I'm gonna do my best to take care of my hair, take care of the hair that I have on my head. I knew what I was getting into. So yeah, honestly, if you don't want to do the maintenance yourself, I would definitely go for traditional size locks and just do like palm rolling or interlocking. But also with you, if you do palm rolling but you want to go in to get someone to do it, I believe it is typically cheaper than if you have like Microlocs or sister locks. You're going to pay a lot more for those retightening sessions. So be aware of that. And if you do go for a smaller lock size and you have a higher lock count and you don't want to pay but you just want them really badly, make sure to do your research and find out that you know for sure that you actually want to actively learn how to retighten properly using the interlocking method. Just make sure that you're aware of the work and the time that does go into it, because it's time consuming. It's definitely time consuming. So just be aware of the maintenance involved in the bigger size locks and the smaller size locks. Less work, bigger size locks, more work and time, smaller size locks. But like I said, if your desire for a certain aesthetic outweighs, you know, the number of hours that you'll spend maintaining it, go for a smaller size, because you don't want to just get something for one reason only and then miss out on having the locks of your dreams. So yeah. Okay, the last thing is versatility. I don't want this to be controversial or comparing locks with other locks, because that's not at all what I want to do. I love all types of locks. I think all types of locks are just so gorgeous. Like, if I could snap my fingers and just try traditional size locks and then snap them again and go back to Microlocs, I would, just because I feel like each size of locks brings a different energy, and gotta love it. So versatility. Let's be real. If you have 50 locks in your head and they're pretty thick, your hair is less versatile than someone who has 500 really tiny locks in their head. That is just a fact. It's not a bad thing. be a good thing for a lot of people because they're going for that low maintenance hairstyle. But trying to do a braid out on really, really thick locks, while it is possible, it is harder to do, and the final result that you're going to get looks entirely different than if you do a braid out in Microlocs. Keep that in mind. If you want ultimate versatility, then go with a smaller lock size. You can use the same tools and the same methods to curl your hair, but they're going to look different. So this kind of ties into the aesthetic, but at the same time, if you have really, really, really thick locks, each lock is thick, and you do perm rod curls, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to use the perm rods in really thick locks than it is if you have tiny micro locks and you're using perm rods to curl your hair. So there are obviously ways to achieve similar looks, like using flexi rods and traditional size locks, but like I said, it's just about versatility, and it's going to look different. Now, another thing I noticed going into that is that people who have traditional locks, while they do curl their hair, most of the time their hair is worn straight and styled, and I think that it looks so good. And people who have Microlocs, a lot of the time their hair is curled. So just keep that in mind. Now, there are people with traditional locks who curl their hair often, like Keisha Charmaine, but even though her locks are big, they're not the biggest. There are traditional locks that are way thicker than that. I don't know if I can think of anyone right now, but just like go on YouTube or Instagram and like search for people with thicker locks, and you'll see how thick locks can get. There are locks that are so thick that I swear you can't even get the 3 locks to braid together to curl it. So, but that's the look that they're going for. That's the aesthetic that they wanted, right? So just keep that in mind when you're deciding on your lock size. Those 5 things: your hair density / hair texture, your current hair length, your desired aesthetic, your desired maintenance, and also your desired level of versatility. All of those should factor in to your lock size. I feel like people who get a lock size and then they kind of like, they second guess it, or they decide that they want to take it out and start over, it's most likely because those 5 things weren't evaluated. They just kind of jumped into something quickly, and that's no shade. Like, a lock journey is also about experimentation. There's nothing wrong with starting over. I had locks for 14 years and I did a big chop, and then I decided to go smaller. There's nothing wrong with that, but the reason why I'm so sure of this size that I have now is because I looked at all those 5 things. I really studied on it, and I remember videos, I think like a year ago or so, I said that I didn't want Microlocs, like I didn't want them that small. But that was my mindset before I actually evaluated, what do I want for my hair? What are my goals? When I close my eyes, what do I see my hair looking like 5 years, 10 years down the line? I see volume. I see big, I see shiny, I see uniform locks, I see gorgeous big hair with a beautiful flexi rod set, or I see like fluffy Bantu knot out curls. I see a really gorgeous defined braid out. These are the things I see when I visualize my hair in the future. So do a little daydreaming, write your thoughts down. I literally put notes in my phone about what I wanted my hair to look like, my range for my lock count. I found people with similar hair densities, and I found out through watching the videos or on their Instagram what their lock count was. And obviously I know that my hair is not going to look the same as anyone that I've researched, because everyone has different hair, right? But getting an idea of what their hair density is and also what their lock count is definitely helped me out. So whether you have thick hair, whether you have fine hair, find people who have hair that looks like yours and get an idea of their lock count to get a better feeling for what your hair could look like and how many locks you want and what your lock size is going to be, because at the end of the day your lock size determines how many locks you have and what your hair is going to look like in the long run. So that was a lot of talking, but I've gotten this question a lot, so I just wanted to answer it in this video. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!